Captain Idris Okonkwo, was 3 seconds from being executed when the message finally reached him. He knelt on the obsidian floor of the Vashtir throne hall, wrists bound in restraint fields that hummed against his skin, surrounded by armored guards twice his height. Above him, on a dais carved from a single fused asteroid, sat Magistrate Ren Shakal, ruler of the Vashtir Dominion, a being whose 4-fingered hands had signed the death warrants of entire species without ever losing sleep over it. "You came uninvited into sovereign space," Shakal said, voice flat as a blade. "You claim you came to help. Help no one requested." "You didn't have to request it," Idris said. "You just had to be dying." A murmur rippled through the guards. Shakal's eyes narrowed. Behind the throne, on a massive screen, the reason for all of it burned in silence. A Vashtir colony fleet, 17 ships, drifting dead in orbit around a poisoned moon, their engines destroyed, their crews slowly suffocating as life support failed hour by hour. Nobody in the Dominion's own military had reached them in time. A single unregistered Earth vessel had. "Execute him," Shakal said, "and send his ship's wreckage back to Earth as a warning." The guards raised their weapons. That was the exact moment every comm channel in the throne hall erupted at once. Alarms screaming. Screens flooding with data no one in the room had authorized. Nobody in that hall knew what was coming. Not yet, 6 days earlier, the Vashtir Dominion had never asked Earth for anything. In 4 decades of contact between humanity and the wider galaxy, the Dominion had treated humans the way an old empire treats a village that hadn't yet learned to build proper roads. Worth observing, not worth respecting. So when their deep colony fleet drifted into a debris storm they hadn't charted, losing all 17 ships' propulsion in one catastrophic cascade, the last thing Magistrate Shakal expected was a distress relay, bouncing the emergency signal straight into human territory by pure accident of trajectory. Nobody expected Earth to answer. Vashtir Protocol didn't even include a category for unsolicited rescue by a lesser species. Aboard the ISV Harmattan, a mid-range survey vessel with a crew of 11, Captain Idris Okonkwo read the intercepted distress call twice before setting his coffee down. "That's Vashtir," said his navigator, Priya Deshmukh, leaning over the console. "They've never even given us a trade agreement. Why would we risk the ship for them?" 17 ships, Idris said quietly. "How many people is that?" Priya checked the signal decay pattern. "Best estimate, 9,000. Maybe more." Idris didn't answer right away. He was thinking about his sister, who died in a shipping accident 10 years earlier, 20 minutes from the nearest rescue vessel. That never came, because the paperwork hadn't cleared in time. He'd promised himself, in the wreckage of that grief, that if he was ever the one who could reach someone in time, he would. "Set a course," he said. But no one on that bridge understood the price of that decision yet. The debris field around the dying Vashtir fleet was a graveyard of shattered ice and shredded alloy, moving fast enough to shred an unshielded hull in seconds. The Harmattan wasn't built for combat, and it certainly wasn't built for navigating a minefield of tumbling wreckage at speed. But Priya threaded it anyway, hands steady on controls that had never been tested like this. "Life support failing on 6 of the 17 vessels," reported Sanjay Rao, the ship's engineer, voice tight. "We can't save them all, Captain. We don't have the capacity." "Then we save who we can reach first," Idris said. "Prioritize the ships closest to total failure." For the next 19 hours, the Harmattan became a lifeline, ferrying emergency oxygen canisters across open space on tethered lines, patching hull breaches with foam sealant never designed for Vashtir alloy, pulling survivors through airlocks that had to be manually cracked open, because the automated systems had died with the ship's power cores. They saved 4,312 Vashtir lives that day. And that was only the beginning of the story, not the end of it. What Idris didn't know, what none of his crew knew, was that Magistrate Shakal had, 6 months earlier, quietly ordered that colony fleet's original propulsion systems, built with substandard alloy to cut costs, skimming resources meant for the mission into a private shipbuilding contract that enriched his own house. The debris storm hadn't caused the catastrophic failure alone. It had only exposed a weakness that should never have existed. When Shakal received word that human vessels had rescued thousands of his own citizens, witnesses who would eventually notice the engine failure patterns, witnesses who might ask uncomfortable questions about why Dominion-grade ships had failed so completely, his relief curdled into something far colder. The truth was about to stun everyone in that hall, but not yet. Shakal ordered Idris's ship intercepted the moment it attempted to return home. Painted as a diplomatic escort at first, 3 Dominion cruisers, welcoming, almost warm. By the time the Harmattan was boarded under the guise of routine inspection, it was already too late for Idris's crew to resist. He surrendered himself to spare his people a fight they couldn't win, trusting that his crew would be released once he was in custody. He was wrong about that too, but he wouldn't learn it for 2 more days. Everything changed the moment Shakal realized what Idris actually knew. In a holding cell beneath the Dominion capital, Idris was interrogated not about trespassing, not about unsanctioned rescue, but about engine telemetry. Someone on the Dominion side had realized his crew's sensor logs, taken during the rescue, contained a complete record of exactly how and why those 17 ships had failed. "You will surrender your ship's data core," said the interrogator, a Vashtir officer named Das Farhan. "And this ends quietly. You could just ask your own engineers why your fleet fell apart," Idris said. "I think you already know the answer. I think that's the problem." Farhan's expression flickered, not anger, but something closer to discomfort. It was the first sign Idris had that not every Vashtir in that building agreed with what was happening to him. Nobody knew what Farhan was hiding, not even Shakal. Das Farhan had been the fleet's original safety inspector, 8 months earlier. He had flagged the substandard alloy in writing. His report had been buried, and he had been quietly reassigned before the fleet ever launched. He'd spent months telling himself it wasn't his responsibility anymore. Watching a foreign captain take the blame for a catastrophe, Farhan himself had tried to prevent broke something loose in him that guilt alone hadn't managed. 3 hours before Idris's public execution was scheduled, Farhan did something that could have ended his career, his freedom, possibly his life. He released the original inspection report, his own name attached, to every surviving colonist from the rescued fleet, along with the sensor logs proving Idris's ship had nothing to do with the failure at all. The council had made a terrible mistake, and now thousands of witnesses knew it, which brings the story back to the throne hall. Restraint fields humming, guards raising weapons, Magistrate Shakal's execution order hanging in the air like a blade about to fall. The exact moment every comm channel in the room erupted with incoming transmissions from 4,312 rescued citizens, all receiving the same leaked report at the same time. "Belay that order," Shakal snapped, too late to stop the tide already turning against him. Screens throughout the capital city lit with the same information. Citizens, who owed their lives to the man kneeling on that floor, now demanding to know why he was about to die for saving them. Shakal's guards lowered their weapons without being told to. Nobody in that hall wanted to be the one holding a smoking gun when the questions started. The magistrate suddenly understood he had lost, and he still had one card left to play. Shakal tried, in his final act as ruler, to frame the entire disaster as an act of sabotage by Farhan alone. A lone traitor, nothing more. It might have worked, had Farhan not anticipated exactly that move and preserved a private, unaltered copy of every order Shakal had ever given regarding the fleet's construction budget. By the time the Dominion's judiciary convened an emergency tribunal, the evidence was too complete to bury. Shakal was removed from his post within the week, not executed, not by a species that, whatever its flaws, still valued due process more than vengeance. Idris found himself unexpectedly grateful for that restraint. He understood, better than most, what it cost to choose mercy when cruelty would have been easier. Idris Okonkwo returned to Earth 6 weeks later than planned, his ship repaired at Dominion expense, his crew reunited and unharmed. The Vashtir Dominion signed its first trade and defense agreement with Earth within the year. Not out of gratitude alone, but because 4,312 citizens had told their government, in no uncertain terms, exactly whose side they intended to be on. Das Farhan resigned his post, and, against all Dominion tradition, requested reassignment to Earth's diplomatic mission. When asked why, he gave a simple answer that ended up quoted in Dominion textbooks a generation later. "Because the humans taught me that doing what's right doesn't require permission. It only requires someone willing to answer when the stars cry for help." Earth had made exactly one mistake in the eyes of the old powers that day. The mistake of caring about people who had never once asked to be saved. It was a mistake humanity intended to keep making, for as long as the stars kept calling.